there was a suggestion that okay, now we can implement a new feature which has graphical kind of content in the mail. For example, in end user wants a graphical representation of top 10 states, active and deceased cases in the mail case. Maybe if this blue is active cases, and maybe the red is deceased cases, something like that. Okay, so this is a bad report, but this is a graphical representation. Okay, so just maybe it's just a bar graph and we can plot it. So for this particular thing, so now we have learned how to explore libraries, several libraries. Now we have used XLS, we have used mail, and we have used web scraping libraries, beautiful soup and things like that. So similarly, there are libraries which can do the plotting. So, sort of the one of the I think it's called Matplotlib. So you can use that and do the graphical things. Okay. So now the challenge is, so insertion of feature is a easy thing. That is because we learn about that particular library and write the code. That is the easy part. The second is difficult part. The second part is difficult. That is because we already have about 4 modules now. Now we are inserting a feature which is maybe we can think of it as a fifth module. That means out of five modules, we have 4 modules which is already working. The fifth module should be inserted in such a way that it doesn't break any four of this or the flow of this. Okay, so that is the difficult part in inserting a new requirement. Okay, so how do you make sure that the new requirement is inserted without any problem? So we need to write code for this particular thing. Maybe use some graphic libraries just get the data, and we need to change a few things. That is now if you try to identify the changes, it's like this. Let me get into writing mode. The changes, if we want to identify, we'll just do the exercise of identifying changes, and then this is one of the biggest activities that happens in our industry. So identifying the changes, identifying the places where the code can get changed, because that is a critical exercise, because we should not break the existing features. So now our current module handles this particular active cases. That means it displays the active cases. Now I also need to find out the deceased cases, which is inside the JSON. So changes would be in reports, and within reports there are several functions we wrote. So there is maybe in dumping XLS, create XLS, or maybe a new function which is now generate graph or something like that. So this is a new function, and our nested loops will also change, because now we were getting only one output out of that function, which we use to send a state name and extract the active number of cases. That will now return two things, that is active cases as well as deceased cases. So that function will change, and that return value will also change, and then that for loop will also change. There is a nested for loop. Okay, that will also change. So there are a lot of changes just to insert, just to calculate the deceased cases. All right, so once we identify these changes, we need to write code, and then first thing we need to do is we run the existing unit test case or any regression framework. Then we come to know that okay, the things are working fine, no feature is broken, and then add unit test case. Now there is unit test cases, then there are new unit test cases. Add new unit test cases and run it again. So now it's easier said than done, so it is not so simple. So once you start modifying code, so all the unit test cases will start breaking, and then you need to modify the unit test cases as well, and then make sure that the existing things are working, and then again you need to work on the feature, and then make sure that the feature is working fine. So this is the challenge that a new requirement brings in, and our unit test cases or any sort of regression test suite automated suite will catch the bugs before it goes out of the development end. Okay, so that is about how to insert new requirement. So basic idea is keep running the regression test suite. So before that we need to have a regression test suite, and then we need to put things in place. So that is all I had to tell about inserting a new requirement. So yeah, any questions here?
Okay. So Digant, you said about inserting new keys, right? So when we bring in, let's say for this particular graph,
Uh-huh.
so if we bring in the graph, we don't need to test all the other pieces, right? It's just about only running that particular module.
No. Here, in order to get okay, in order to get this data, now we are collecting only active test cases, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Now, in order to collect disease test cases, let us look at the code. Okay. If you go and look at the function get total cases. Now this is
Yeah.
returning only active cases here. This count is only active cases here. Now, if I want to change code actually, so it would be looking something like so this will go. Spelling is wrong. Okay, so something like this, and then here this code will also change. Now we have active cases, and for this particular this one, so we need to say deceased, and then we need to increment the right counter here. Okay, here it is active cases. Now here I need to return two values here instead of this count
Okay.
deceased. So once I have this, if I start running the program, it will start crashing. Let's try to run the program, because it's not an independent model, because it's an important model which touches all the
And when you're trying to run that, you're using a unit test keyword, right?
right.
So is that something that we are giving, or is it built in?
And now we should specify that which module will okay, when we are running unit test cases, we are running it as a file, so independent file. So we must specify that this module it's like linking dynamic library in C++.
Oh, okay.
See, now I try to run the actual program. So now it is telling, okay, get process data missing one argument. So where it's here. So now I need to go to the calling function here and then look at line number 18. So now I have only one written function here. So now I need to take two things, and then once I take two things, say active and deceased, active and say deceased, two variables. Once I take this, this also will start changing. So not this, sorry.
So can I give it that way? But
Yes, not this function. This is a different function. This function, get total cases. This function here, yes, you can take because it is returning a tuple. Um, when it returns a tuple, it automatically takes that two values, total cases, active cases, and deceased cases, something like this. Okay.
uh,
So now we have changed this. So also our data structure will change. So it has a cascading effect. So now we have changed to a couple of functions. So that is how we need to make sure that at least our regression is not working. So I have I have changed the return function so that whoever is taking that written values. So this data structure will change. So in order to collect this data, this is data and this is the cases, say for example that is in orange, so I need that to extract that data, right? So in order to do that, in fact you can write separate function. That is another way of doing. Same function can be duplicated and written as a separate function, and then that function needs to be inserted here, but that will be like having a duplication of code. So a lot of code starting from here, it will be a duplication of code. So we are trying to manage with the existing code.
So, okay.
So that is how the cascading effect is there. So I'll just revert it back. Line number 18. So okay, while making test cases, we did one thing, that is
The URL was changed.
yeah, reports. Line number 18, we need to specify URL. That URL is called URL. Let us go to it again. 93. Okay, I think there as well. We are using this at two places. Uh, 61. What will see? It was working. Process news. Okay, this is not required. And now it is trying to collect today's news from Deccan Herald, and then I have added everyone's name in the configuration, so you should be getting a mail. So you will get a mail. So let us wait. Just taking time. Okay, the mail is sent. So
Yeah, I got an email.
okay, so that email will contain all the that our requirements is. So it must be having. This is an email. Let us look at that. So I was interested in Karnataka's data. So Karnataka, and then headlines, the news. Okay. So we can beautify this, but yeah, it's not required as of now. So then we have the subject line as well. COVID statewide stats. Okay, good. And then also we have the report attached, which is the country's report. Okay. So that is our end of our session. So so that is all I had to present, and these are the intricacies of inserting a new feature. So it can get complicated, But once we get used to that, do it a couple of times, then our brain starts thinking in terms of what type of data is incoming and what type of data is I should be returning, and then it becomes easy. So that is why we also always try to write down things before writing the code, and then uh, we do the changes. Okay. So looking back, I just want to show you what are the things that we have learned so far. So this is a word cloud that we learned. So this is all. So now we can. I hope we can read and write the code, and then split a bigger problem into smaller pieces. This was our goal, and transform our ideas to code. Okay. So we wrote more than I think 200 300 lines of code. We started with like scratch, that is nothing, and then we have about 300 lines of code. And then from day 1 to day 20 we saw the progress. That in the first class we started with how the Python works, how it picks up the program and executes it, and then we learned about data types and things like that. Then we uh, had a problem statement. We broke it through, and we on the flow we learned how to uh, jump into libraries and use those libraries. What are the things inside that? Learn about that concept, and just do not try to reinvent the wheel. Just try to stitch it like a tailor. You just get requirements, and then we keep on typing the code, and the requirement comes together. Right. So that is all I had to present. Thank you for attending the bootcamp.